Hope you're doing well. We're going to be looking when Paul is in Athens today. Our hymn is called Sing Praise to God Who Reigns Above.
Sing praise to God who reigns above, the God of all creation, the God of power, the God of love, the God of our salvation. With healing balm my soul is filled, and every faithless murmur still to God all praise and glory.
Appreciate it, Lee. Verse 2, the Lord is never far away, but through all griefs distressing, an ever-present help and stay, our peace and joy and blessing. As with a mother's tender hand, God gently leads the chosen band, to God all praise and glory. Thus all my toilsome way along I sing aloud thy praises, that earth may hear the grateful song my voice unwearied raises. Be joyful in the Lord, my heart, both soul and body bear your part, to God all praise and glory. Let all who name Christ's holy name give God all praise and glory. Let all who own his power proclaim aloud the wondrous story. Cast each false idol from its throne, for Christ is Lord and Christ alone. To God all praise and glory. So as we think about cast each false idol, that brings us to Paul in Athens. Acts 17, verse 16. Now while Paul waited for them, his companions, while he waited for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him when he saw that the city was given over to idols. Therefore he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and with the Gentile worshippers, and in the marketplace daily with those who happened to be there. Then certain Epicurean and Stoic philosophers encountered him, and some said, "What does this babbler want to say?" Others said, "He seems to be a proclaimer of foreign gods, because he preached to them Jesus and the resurrection." And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, "May we know what this new doctrine is of which you speak? For you are bringing some strange thing to our ears. Therefore we want to know what these things mean." For all the Athenians and the foreigners who were there spent their time in nothing else but either to tell or to hear some new thing. Then Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are very religious. For as I was passing through and considering the objects of your worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. Therefore the one whom you worship without knowing, him I proclaim to you. God, who made the world and everything in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he worshipped with men's hands as though he needed anything, since he gives to all life, breath, and all things. And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as also some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. Therefore, since we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, something shaped by art and man's devising. Truly, these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent, because he has appointed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he has ordained. He has given assurance of this to all by raising him from the dead. And when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, while others said, "We will hear you again on this matter." So Paul departed from among them. However, some men joined him and believed, among them Dionysius the Areopagite, a woman named Damaris, and others with him. The city was just given over to idols. They had idols. Writers who talk about it, they just had idols for everything. To the point where, and Paul sees that they even have an idol with the inscription, "To the unknown God." You know, just as I'm sitting here thinking, which is sometimes difficult to do, I know. You know, as I was reading that, I was thinking about that business right there. Shaped by art and man's devising. You know, and what I was thinking about just as I read that? So that idol with the inscription, "To the unknown God," What did that idol look like? Seeing how they didn't know it. I mean, all the other idols, and I mean, artistic license, of course. But you know, when you have an idol to the unknown God, it's like, what are we going to fashion this one to look like? Yeah. And so Paul says, I'm going to talk to you about the unknown God. He doesn't dwell in temples made with hands. And frankly, how do you make an idol of the invisible God? Anyway, I was just wondering what that idol looked like. Seeing how they were trying to cover their bases, regardless. Here, so the city's given over to idols. And as Paul speaks to them, and he makes this point, just as their own poet said, for we are also his offspring. And that if we are the offspring of God, as even their own poets said, well then why would we think that God is gold or silver or stone? Why would we think that his divine nature is gold or silver or stone? It's like, no. That's not what God is like. Because that's not what we are like. We have been made in the image of God. And so that's one of the points he makes. Since we're the offspring of God, we are the offspring of God. The Lord has created us. He also makes the point, that verse that I stumbled over, when he says, let's see, he gives to all life, breath, and all things. Not one God does this, one God does that, one God does something else, another God, no. God gives to all life, breath, and all things. We are the offspring of God. Verse 30, truly these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent. It's a new day, isn't it? Those times in the old law, when the Jews had the oracles of God, and you had the Gentiles, and the Gentiles did what the Gentiles did. Romans speaks about that, both pro and con. But it's a new day. And they needed to understand that. The gospel is now going to the Gentiles. And so now, more than ever before, and the reason I say that is because Nineveh was also told to repent. The Gentiles were expected to repent back then. It's a whole nother, we made that point recently though. But especially now it's explicit. Now he commands all men everywhere to repent. Truly these times of ignorance God overlooked, God winked at, God gave them over. Romans 1 and 2 speak about again. Gave them over because they rejected God. How does that verse in Romans put it? Let me flip in my Bible real quick. I think it's God gave them over to a debased mind. In Romans chapter 1 at verse 28, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, because they did not like to retain God. And God allowed those things to continue on. Now, it's like, better repent, because judgment day is coming. He will judge the world in righteousness. And he speaks about the resurrection of the dead, and that is the assurance. Namely, when we die, we do not stay dead. Just as Jesus was raised from the grave, death is not the end. See, they had drugged Paul in there because they wanted to hear something new. Paul's talking to them about something new. And when they hear about the resurrection of the dead, they mock. Many of them mock. Some mocked, others said, we'll hear you again. Paul ends up departing. But we think about the resurrection of the dead, and we better remember, we've been made in the image of God. And that means we better follow our Father. Be faithful and do his bidding as his children, as his creation. Because if we don't, We know what's in store for us at judgment. We know judgment is coming, and we will stand before the Lord. So we better get on the Lord's side. Better get on the Lord's side and better follow Him. Better turn from the idols of our own lives and worship the Lord. Give Him the glory, and that brings us back to our hymn in speaking about to God all praise and glory. Sing praise to God who reigns above. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.